Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's going on, everybody? I hope everybody's doing great today. I know my day's gone pretty good. Well, I like to always get my video podcast started with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers. So if you would, please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, well, let's get started. What's happening, everybody? Man, today's a great day, dude. It's going good. My day's pretty busy. I've had a few appointments that I did this morning. Today was my peer support group over at the VA, so that was great. I always enjoy going to the peer support group because I hear different stories. Those are, to be honest with you, the stories that come from the meetings, stories that just come from random people that I hear are the stories of encouragement, the stories that keep me going in my sobriety and in my life to keep moving forward. And it's such a deep reminder of how far I've come. It's a reminder of where I don't want to go, and it's a reminder of what I need to do. You know what I mean? It's a reminder of the consistency of the daily life, of a lifestyle that will keep you in a positive realm, in a positive and spiritual realm. You know what I mean? And because it's so easy to get into a realm of negativity and darkness, and that's I know that to be a fact of experience. And so I had a peer support group that I went to this morning, and it's great. You know what I mean? So in turn there, this is where I get the topic for today's video podcast, and the topic's going to be rock bottom, or hitting your rock bottom. You know what I mean? And I want to start off by saying that, rock bottoms can be deceiving. Rock bottoms can sometimes feel that they never come, in a sense. And sometimes you have to, I would say sometimes you probably just have to hope and pray that when you do hit rock bottom, that you're well aware that I would like to say that I would pray that if you're still in the addiction, that when you hit rock bottom, that you're still able to recognize that that's rock bottom. You know what I mean? Because there's been a couple of the stories that I heard today were people sharing their stories about their rock bottom and how they were just blinded by some of the things that they were going through. And one particular gentleman was stating that he had such a problem with alcohol that this person said that he drank every day, every single day, like he drank excessively, and he would when he would go get checkups at the doctor through the VA or whatever, that he would stop intentionally drinking for a couple of days prior to the visit, so that he would his blood work would come up, where it needed to be, and because he was, I guess had some legal issues or whatever, but his legal issues were part of VA legal system and that sort of thing. He had to maintain this sobriety, and because he had the disease of alcoholism, it was hard for him to do that. So he would manipulate the system in a sense to where he knew that he only had to go once a month. So every time he'd go, he knew that when he had that appointment that he had to go 4 days without drinking, and or maybe moderately lightly drinking, and then go do the test, and the enzymes would come up that it looked like he was doing a little better but still struggling. And let alone he didn't know that he wound up, that he was actually had this bad case of cirrhosis, right? So he mentioned that he had to go to the doctor the following week. They submitted him into the hospital, and the doctor told him that he's probably going to be there for a couple of days. So a couple of days went by, and the man said that he was telling the doctor, well, you said it was only 2 days, so I'm just going to go ahead and go. So, out of his own will, he took off, but noted on the documentation that, was ill-advised through the advice of the doctor, but he still went, whatever, right? So the doctor said, you're really sick, and you'll probably be back here in a few days. Well, within a week, the man was back, and realized that, he was coughing up, blood and whatever, right? And said, he goes, okay, so he knew that it was bad. And so he wound up going back, but my point is that from the moment that he got submitted, it passed like 2 to 3 weeks that he just kept going back out. You know what I mean? That the disease kept telling him that you're okay. The disease kept telling him, no, you got to go have another drink. And it blinded him from his rock bottom. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until he literally fell on the floor at the VA, where they had to actually pick him up and take him to go to the emergency room or whatever. And there's when he, said, well, you only have a few months to live. And, it just, then rock bottom kicked in. You know what I mean? Now he's got this whole 360-degree thing, and I've been seeing this particular gentleman has been in my peer support group since I started going. He was probably, when I got in the peer support group, he had already been there like 2 visits. So he has like 2 weeks on me as far as the time that we've seen each other at the peer support group. But since the time that I've seen him, it's been, a lapse of probably a good year, a little over a year, and this particular gentleman is now doing great. You know what I mean? His liver is almost all the way back up healthy, and he still has to take medication, and he's still going through his thing. But compared to when he was first there, crippling looking and just, yellow jaundiced and just frail. And now this particular gentleman is just, he's just upbeat, and he's moving along great, and sharing his story. You know what I mean? And that's that's one of the things that I enjoy listening to, is those stories, because I could relate. You know what I mean? I could remember in my personal journey being stuck in the addiction, and losing my home, losing my business, losing family, and winding up homeless and in the street, still wasn't enough for me to stop. You know what I mean? I stayed homeless and in the streets for 5 years. It took me 5 years to finally hit my rock bottom one day at a park and asking my higher power for the help. Asking my higher power to intervene, because I've had enough. I was tired. You know what I mean? And that's coming from somebody who had 10 years prior sobriety after going to his second treatment center. You know what I mean? That's somebody who already knows a 12-step program, who knows sobriety for years. I had my longest stint of sobriety was 10 years, and relapsing after that was just terrible. But hitting a rock bottom, and knowing the things that you're doing are consistently, just, killing you in a sense, and literally, and continuing to do it, continuing that cycle, that repetitious of just negativity and darkness, because ultimately that's what it is. You're just in this cycle of this whirlwind of just dark negativity, and it's hard. You do get blinded, and you don't realize until you get this little freaking glimpse in that whole cloud of smoke. The smoke clears for you just a little bit, just enough to see. And that's what you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss just that little bit, because that little bit could be the little opening that you're supposed to be going to, that you're supposed to grab onto, that you're supposed to look through and see this life of prosperity, of spirituality, of positivity. You know what I mean? And I personally had to do that. You know what I mean? And that little moving the curtain over and looking on the other side to see what's over there was me allowing myself and saying, you know what? Yes, I'll accept and I'll go to treatment again. And yes, I'll accept and go to a sober living community for the first time. And lo and behold, because I removed that curtain and looked over to the other side of the fence, I was able to, be able to be here doing this video podcast and honestly saying that I'm in a spiritual and positive realm, that the things that I've been doing on a repetitious basis have kept me here and kept me from being blinded. You know what I mean? Because I know what rock bottom is. I know what my rock bottom is now. And I don't want to ever go back there. You know what I mean? Because I know the process and the things that get you to that rock bottom. And for me, the last rock bottom, it lasted 5 years of getting all this negative darkness until I finally was able to say, you know what? Oh my God, I got to get out of here. You know what I mean? And for some, I know personally, for some people, it doesn't happen. I know some people that I personally know that didn't make it. I know people that are still here, but mentally are not here now. They got to that psychosis part of being addicted to drugs that you can't come back from. You know what I mean? They're those people that you see walking around talking to themselves and just, dumpster diving and that sort of kind of thing. You see those people, all around, your cities. And I'm grateful to my higher power that I'm not in that situation, because I could have easily been, because I was ingesting drugs that I had no idea what they were. You know what I mean? Somebody could sell you something and say that it is this, but you don't know what you're actually smoking or injecting or whatever. You know what I mean? And I'm just grateful that I was able to recognize my rock bottom. And, it's if you're someone who's just starting out in your drug path, in this addiction world, man, I pray that you get to see rock bottom pretty sooner than later, and that you're able to recognize. And for those of you who have relapsed, perhaps, that you too may be open-minded enough and willing to accept that rock bottom, to move on to this world of spirituality and positivity, because I know how hard it can be. I mean, my relapse lasted 5 years. You know what I mean? And by the grace of God, I'm glad that I was able to get out of it. I mean, like I said before, I know people who didn't make it out. You know what I mean? And it's terrible because it happens. But I met a guy the other day at one of the meetings that I've known through one of the treatment centers that I went to, and He's a really cool gentleman. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was telling me a little bit about how he was doing, and since I last seen him, which was at the treatment center, and he'd been up and down. You know what I mean? He still indulged here and there, and is still trying to find that spiritual and positive realm, and to be able to stay. I'm sure he's probably found it, but just didn't know how to stay there. In other words, if you find yourself in that situation where you know and you feel this, and you feel that you're in this positive and spiritual realm, but you still have this inkling of slipping here and there, and that personally to me is that there's still reservations there that you haven't dealt with. Because the reservations are the things that keep you going back to whatever the stronghold was. You know what I mean? And that means that you just have to dig a little bit deeper, spend a little bit more time. And when I say that, I mean go deeper and spend a little bit more time within yourself. Because ultimately that's where the recovery and the spirituality and the positivity comes from. It has to come from you, because it's whatever you let in this thing here, in your mind, is going to dictate your actions, and it's going to dictate the things that you talk about, the mode, the momentum, the aura, how you perceive yourself is what you're going to perceive to the rest of the world. You know what I mean? And that's just the plain truth. You know what I mean? When I was in the world of addiction, all I did was use and did things that were negative to use. In other words, did illegal things, that's how my life revolved. Around those types of things. So that to me is things that are in the dark world, and there's a little bit glimpses of hope here and there. You know what I mean? You do have these days where you're smiling and laughing and this and that, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you're sitting there either with a bottle in your hand, a can of drink, something stuck into your vein, or something that you're smoking, or something that you're popping. You know what I mean? Ultimately, that's the stronghold. And that goes back to the reservation. You know what I mean? I'm not worthy. I don't feel like I'm worthy. Nobody loves me. I've lost everything. I've lost everybody, and this is all I got left. So why not? But I'm here to tell you through personal experience that when you get into this world of positivity, spirituality, it just gives you this different outlook at life. It gives you this different outlook at yourself, because ultimately you become this new person. And you know what? To me, that's one of the beautiful things about it, is that it's a transformation. And you get a second chance at becoming anything and anybody you want to be. You know what I mean? You get a brand new slate when you come to this side. A brand new slate. You can be anything and anybody you want to be. And I hope and pray that that's something spiritual and positive. Because I know that because I chose spirituality and positivity, that I wanted to lead my life this way, it has kept me in this positive journey. You know what I mean? Nothing I do today is negative. Absolutely nothing I do today is negative. Everything I do today is positive. Everything I did in the darkness when I was in the world of addiction, I don't do anymore. Any of it. I don't do any of the things I did before, and I don't associate myself with any of the environment, people, places, and things that I did. Because if I do, that's the stronghold for me. If I keep going to that side of town, or if I keep visiting those friends, then ultimately you become a product of your environment, and that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? And I'd rather be in this world of positivity because it feels better, it looks better, and it just makes life easier. You know what I mean? For me to be able to help myself and help somebody else is just the greatest feeling. You know what I mean? Today I can, sleep comfortable at night. Today I got a place to sleep at night. You know what I mean? And, it's just, you have to be aware and know that if you are at rock bottom, know that there's help, and know that all you got to do is ask. Walk into a room of NA or AA or a local hospital, or talk to someone. You know what I mean? There's numbers out there and crisis lines and of places and people you can call and talk to and get the help. They don't turn people away. You know what I mean? They don't report you to the cops or anything like that, if that's what you're worried about. You know what I mean? You're dealing with people who have a passion to help their fellow human being. And that's one of the things that I enjoy and am grateful for, that I get the opportunity to do that. You know what I mean? And that's the point. That's one of the main reasons that I do this podcast, is to share a story that may help somebody, because I know that I've sat in the rooms and heard a story of a gentleman whose life touched mine, in the sense that he was going through things that I was going through. I had no idea who this person was, but he looked happy. He looked like he had his shit together, and that he, was just had this aura about him. And I was like, man, why does he look like that? What has this guy got that I don't? And I decided that day that I was going to do what he did. Follow the footsteps of people who are successful, and you too will be successful. You know what I mean? Follow the people that are dealing in the darkness and negativity, and guess what? That's exactly where you wind up. And like the old guy, this old gentleman in one of the AA meetings that I attended one time, the gentleman named Greg would always say, guess what? If you do nothing, then guess what happens? Nothing happens. And that's so true. You know what I mean? If you do nothing, then guess what? Nothing's going to happen. And doing just a little bit is enough to push you into that world of positivity, spirituality, and recovery. So I encourage you to pick up the phone, call somebody, attend a meeting, leave me a comment. You know what I mean? If you need some help, leave me a comment, and I'll do my best to navigate you to the resources and the places that you need to go and contact. And if you're in my city, San Antonio, Texas, hell, I'll even go meet up with you. You know what I mean? So just comment and that sort of thing, and we'll see what happens. But at any rate, I guess that's going to be it for today's video podcast. I really greatly appreciate you guys watching and tuning in. But I guess until the next time, man, when the smoke clears, I am the Recovery Plug.